I'm 20 years old now, living far from the tiny West Virginia town of just around 4,000 people where I grew up. And let me tell you, the one person I pray never crosses my path again is my maternal grandmother. She's still out there, trying every twisted trick to reach me, even after more than 10 years of me cutting all contact completely. If she ever shows up in front of me, I won't hesitate to walk away or call for help. This is my story of escaping someone who refused to let go. Growing up in that small town felt normal on the surface, but underneath there was chaos. My mom carried deep scars from her own childhood, thanks to her mother's controlling, unstable behavior and the brutal abuse from her father. That instability passed down in ways that made our home life turbulent at times. My dad had his own struggles too. Still, despite everything, I always felt physically safe with my parents. They protected us as best they could. My grandmother, let's call her someone I no longer name, didn't see it that way. She believed she knew better than my parents about what was right for me. She dragged them into court trying to force some kind of legal visitation or access to me as a grandparent. For the record, West Virginia doesn't make it easy for grandparents to override fit parents' decisions, and she didn't succeed. Instead, her relentless harassment backfired. The court granted my family a protective order against her because of how far she went. I only learned the full details of that legal fight last year, but it explains so much. My mom spent her entire life under that woman's iron grip, plus the violence from her own father. Things like being kicked hard enough to leave permanent marks. There were other deeply disturbing behaviors in that household too, like forcing a child to play along in bizarre role games. My grandmother also had serious issues with stealing and extreme mood swings that crossed into dangerous territory. I don't throw around words like that casually. They fit what I witnessed and what my mom endured. Her first big public stunt happened during the town's Memorial Day parade. The route runs from the school straight down to the cemetery, right over the Main Street Bridge. My dad was driving his truck in the parade lineup, right ahead of where my group was walking. Suddenly, I hear her screaming my name from the sidewalk. She's shoving people aside, barreling toward me like nothing else matters. I froze, tried to pretend I didn't hear her, kept walking like everything was fine, but inside I was terrified. My dad spotted it immediately. He pulled over, got me into the truck, and called the police. The rest is a blur. All I remember is the humiliation of everyone staring, the fear gripping my chest, and knowing she wouldn't stop. She escalated even worse the next time. She actually showed up at my school. By then, my parents had already given the office her photo, full name, every alias she used, everything to block her from getting near me. But somehow she talked her way in. When they called my classroom to have me come down, I flat out refused. I started panicking, breathing hard, feeling like the walls were closing in. Thank God for Ms. Farley, the absolute best teacher anyone could ask for. She didn't hesitate. She locked the classroom down right then, kept us safe, and called my mom immediately. That incident pushed things over the edge. I believe that's when we got a full restraining order in place. A few years later, when I was 9, my little sister came along. She was born with bright red hair that stood out like a beacon against my parents and my darker coloring. My grandmother spread vicious rumors all over town, claiming the mailman was the real father, accusing my mom of being on drugs before the pregnancy, anything to hurt us. The truth? My mom was battling a serious autoimmune disease. She'd been through radiation, heavy steroids, pure hell with treatments. She got pregnant with my sister right in the middle of all that, while on birth control, and miraculously went into remission for years because of it. But as soon as my sister was born, we packed up and left the state entirely to get away. Even after we moved, she never stopped. She's created hundreds of fake Facebook profiles over the years, sent endless emails, tried contacting me through every distant relative, old neighbor, or acquaintance she could track down. Years later, when I finally returned to my hometown for the first time since I was 9, I stopped by our old house. I knocked on the neighbor's door next door just to say hi. We caught up, and eventually the conversation turned to the old small-town gossip. He told me things I'd never known. How she used to creep around at night, shining a flashlight through our windows. How she'd show up in the dead of night and bounce a basketball on his porch to be disruptive. He even said she urinated on his porch once. It was chilling to hear how far her obsession went, even after we'd left. To the woman who should have been a grandmother but chose to be a nightmare instead, stay away. Do not try to find me again. Do not reach out. Do not show up. We've built a life without you, and it will stay that way. Let's never meet again. I was sitting alone at the rickety folding table in my mother's unfinished basement, surrounded by half-packed moving boxes, rubbing my right hand over and over like I could scrub away whatever invisible mark had been left on it. My eyes were locked on nothing, mind miles away, until my brother appeared out of nowhere and started shaking my shoulder. Hey, you okay? You good? His voice snapped me back, but the question only made the dread settle heavier in my chest. If he only knew how far from okay I really was, or how I ended up down here, hiding from something that should have stayed buried. It all started this past summer when life actually felt pretty decent for once. I had a solid night shift job at the local pizza place. Nothing glamorous, but the tips were steady, and it was an easy walk from the house I shared with a couple of my old high school buddies. No car needed, which was great because I didn't have one. During the day, I was knocking out online classes toward my degree, so the pizza gig fit perfectly. Low stress, flexible, and close enough that I could roll out of bed, throw on my uniform, and still make it on time. The fastest route home cut straight through Greenwick Cemetery. Yeah, I know. Most people would avoid a graveyard at night, especially after midnight when my shifts often ended. But I've been walking that path for months and never had any trouble. The place was old, quiet, and honestly kind of peaceful in a weird way. I liked reading the faded inscriptions on the headstones as I went, piecing together little bits of history from people long gone. The cemetery wasn't patrolled, no gates locked after dark, so it was just open ground under the stars. There were basically 2 ways through it to reach my street. If you entered from the pizza shop side, you followed the wide main path for a bit until it split into a fork, left or right branch, both curving in big loops before rejoining near the exit right across from my house. Coming from my side, you'd pick either branch and it'd funnel you back to the main path leading out the other end. Simple enough. I didn't notice anything unusual at first. One evening on my way to work, though, something caught my eye near the entrance on my home side, right-hand side as you walk in. A small, rounded headstone, maybe 2 feet tall, pale gray stone weathered by time. It was old and crumbling like so many others in a place that's been filling up for over a century. The lettering was so faded you could barely make out the main name area, no visible dates at all. But at that angle, in the fading light, the big visible word looked exactly like beware. That stopped me cold. Beware? On a grave? I blinked hard, stepped closer. No way. I rubbed my eyes, squinted. It was getting darker fast, hard to read anything clearly. I pulled out my phone to use the screen glow for light, and then I saw the time, 8:42. Shit, I had maybe 15 minutes to get to work, No time to mess around. I muttered a curse, shoved the phone back in my pocket, and hurried off down the path without looking back. The whole shift, though, that word stuck in my head. When I finally clocked out around 2 a.m. and headed back toward the cemetery, I told myself, perfect chance to check it out properly now. I went straight to where I'd seen it, near the exit by my house. Nothing. No rounded gray stone, no beware. I figured maybe I'd taken the wrong fork earlier. I crossed over to the other path, scanned the same spot relative to the entrance. Still nothing that matched. No decrepit headstone like that anywhere nearby. I stood there scratching my head in the dark, feeling stupid. Had I imagined the whole thing? Exhaustion from the long night, probably. I shrugged it off and trudged home to crash. That night in bed, though, I couldn't let it go. I grabbed my phone and started searching. Ben where buried Greenwick Cemetery, Ben Wall. Anything starting with B, Beatrice, even just beware as a name or word. About 50 hits popped up, old obituaries, cemetery records, a few photos attached. I scrolled through the first 10 or so, comparing grainy images of stones. None matched what I'd seen. It would take forever to check them all, and my eyes were burning. I gave up and tried to sleep. Next night I had off, but the following shift I had to go back through anyway. I felt this weird anxiety building as I approached the gates. Nothing specific, just a knot in my stomach telling me to take the long way around the outside. I ignored it and went in anyway. This time I picked the left path deliberately, following it until it merged back with the main one. I was almost to the pizza shop exit when I saw it. There it was, same rounded top, same pale gray, same spot, but on the complete opposite side of the cemetery from where it had been before. Impossible. No one moves headstones overnight. I walked up slowly, heart picking up speed. The word was unmistakable now. Beware carved deep and clear at the top. Below it, the rest was caked in dirt and grime. I stepped right onto the grave mound in front of it and started brushing the soil away with my hand. My fingers were trembling. The first word underneath emerged. What? I kept going, uncovering more. What happens above? It was too dark to see the rest clearly. I pulled my phone out again, switched on the flashlight app, aimed it down. My memory blurs here. I don't know if I got the light on the stone first or if the phone slipped from my grip before I could steady it. All I know is it fell face up onto the dirt, flashlight beam shooting straight up into the night. The light hit the underside of the letters, casting weird shadows that made everything snap into focus. What happens above stops below. The words were perfectly legible now, carved in that same faded but deliberate script. My gut screamed run. I dropped to my knees to snatch the phone back. The beam blinded me for a second as I grabbed it. I started to stand, and something yanked my right arm forward hard. I couldn't see my hand clearly, spots dancing from the light, but I felt it, cold, wet earth closing around my wrist like a vice. Panic exploded through me. I pulled back with everything I had. The more I fought, the deeper it sank, past my wrist, up my forearm. Dirt packed under my nails, cold and clinging. I screamed for help, thrashing, yelling into the empty night. Then, nothing. Blackout. Are you okay? Do you need help? An old man's voice, rough and concerned. I blinked against sudden daylight. My brother. No, wait, an old guy with a scraggly gray beard was crouched beside me on the grass just outside the cemetery entrance on my house's side. My right hand was buried up to the elbow in dark, damp soil, but I was gripping my phone like a lifeline. Hours had passed. The sun was high. How the hell had I ended up all the way back over here? I didn't answer him. I just yanked my arm free, scrambled up, and ran, full sprint to the house. Locked every door, every window, called in sick to work, and kept calling in sick. Days turned into a month where I barely left my bed. My roommates started asking questions, worried glances, but I couldn't tell them. How do you explain a headstone that moves? A grave that tries to swallow your arm? Every time my phone screen lit up with a notification, I'd catch a flicker on the wall, like the faint outline of that rounded stone shadowing the paint for half a second before vanishing. I couldn't take it anymore. I packed what I could carry and moved back in with my mom, down to the basement where the light doesn't reach the corners and the boxes block the stairs. I don't talk about it. I don't go near Greenwick Cemetery. I don't even walk past the entrance anymore. Whatever pulled me that night, whatever whispered those words, it's still out there. And I'll take this secret to the grave, to the thing under that stone, stay buried. I was only 8 years old, sitting alone on a small white school bus rumbling down a gravel road in rural Sweden, heading home after another ordinary day. What happened next still haunts me every time I think about walking that lonely stretch alone, because the stranger who appeared out of nowhere changed everything in a matter of minutes, and I genuinely believe I escaped something truly dangerous. In the Swedish countryside, especially in wooded, spread-out areas like where my family lived, kids don't always get picked up right at their front doors. Instead, small buses, often plain white minibuses, drop groups of us at shared stops along the main roads or at clusters of mailboxes set up for convenience. The post office doesn't have to drive down every long driveway, and parents don't have to trek out every day. My stop was one of those, a simple setup of metal mailboxes nailed to posts beside a narrow gravel road, surrounded by thick pine forest on both sides. No houses in sight, just trees, and then a 10-minute walk, longer for short legs like mine, along that empty road to reach my home. I was always the only kid getting off at that particular stop. The neighbors were few and far between, scattered through the woods, so there were never any friends my age waiting or walking the same path. If someone new moved in, it was major news. Everyone noticed and talked about it. That's why, the day this happened, I immediately clocked the man standing by the mailboxes as someone I'd never seen before. He was fiddling with the boxes, or pretending to, but he didn't look like he belonged there. No car nearby, no mail in his hands, just standing, waiting. The bus pulled away, leaving me alone on the gravel with him behind me. I started my usual walk home, not thinking much of it at first. Kids that age aren't always great at spotting red flags. I just figured he was some random person checking mail or whatever. He began walking in the same direction, trailing maybe 20 to 30 meters back. After a minute or two, he started mumbling to himself, low, indistinct words I couldn't make out. I didn't turn around. I just kept going, pulling out my Nintendo 3DS like I always did on the bus ride and now on the walk to distract myself. That's when things shifted. As soon as I started playing, his voice cut through the quiet forest air, creepy, strained, almost sing-song. What are you playing? Hey, what game is that? He kept repeating it, over and over, the tone getting weirder each time. I didn't answer at first, hoping he'd stop or turn off somewhere. But he didn't. The questions got louder, more insistent. Finally, I turned my head just enough to glance back and say Super Mario or something like that. And that's when I saw his face properly. He was staring at me with this intense, unblinking glare, like pure rage mixed with something unhinged. His hand was scratching furiously at the side of his neck, nails digging in, and his head was jerking side to side in quick, erratic twitches. It wasn't normal. It wasn't even close to normal. My stomach dropped. This wasn't some awkward adult being weird. This felt wrong on a level my 8-year-old brain finally registered as danger. I burst into quiet tears almost instantly, terrified but trying not to make noise. My legs felt heavy, but I kept walking faster. Maybe 20 seconds passed like that, me sniffling, him still behind me, when suddenly he bolted. Not toward me, but past me, sprinting full speed down the road a bit before veering sharply off into the dense woods on the right side. No warning, no reason I could see. He just ran. I froze for a split second, then panic took over. I started running too, as fast as my little legs could carry me, sobbing out loud now and yelling, "Mom, Mom," even though I knew she wasn't home yet. We only had one car back then, and Dad had to take a longer route home from work, adding maybe half an hour. The walk that usually took 10 minutes now felt endless. Running cut it down to maybe 5, but it still seemed like forever. From somewhere deeper in the trees, his voice echoed back, starting as this loud, manic laughter that carried across the forest like he wanted the whole world to hear it. Then it twisted into something that sounded like screams of pain or agony, raw and horrible, before snapping back into that same wild laughing again. It went on, fading and rising as he moved through the woods parallel to the road, sometimes closer, sometimes farther. I couldn't see him anymore, but I could hear him the entire way home. I finally reached our house, hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the lock. I slammed the door behind me, locked it, and ran straight to the bathroom, partly because I needed the toilet from sheer terror, partly because it had a small window where I could peek out toward the road without being seen. I stood there on tiptoes, crying quietly, scanning the trees for any sign of movement. Nothing. The laughing had stopped by then. My parents got home maybe 5 to 10 minutes later. I was still in the bathroom when I heard the car pull up. I rushed out and told them everything. The man at the mailboxes, the creepy questions, the stare, the neck scratching, the sudden run into the woods, and that awful sound following me all the way back. They listened, faces going pale. I don't remember them calling the police right then, and to this day, I've never asked if they filed a report or if anything came of it. Maybe they did and nothing happened. Maybe they thought it was better not to scare me more by dragging it out. Either way, it was never mentioned again in our house. That day taught me how quickly normal can turn into nightmare fuel. I never walked that road the same way after that. I started paying attention to every sound in the trees, every shadow. And I still get chills thinking about what might have happened if he hadn't suddenly run off, or if he'd run toward me instead. To the man who waited at those mailboxes that afternoon, I hope we never cross paths again. Let's not fucking meet. I was 24, alone in a massive amusement park on one of its final open days of the season, surrounded by thousands of strangers screaming on roller coasters. And yet the most terrifying part of the entire afternoon wasn't any drop track or loop. It was realizing, too late, that the seemingly harmless guy I'd been polite to in line had latched onto me so tightly that extricating myself felt impossible without turning cruel. What started as casual small talk spiraled into hours of guilt trips, boundary-pushing questions, and a creeping sense that I'd accidentally become the object of his fixation. By the time the sun set and the park lights flickered on, I was walking away fast, heart pounding, scanning every face behind me, convinced I might have just handed a deeply unstable person way too much information about my life. This happened back in early November 2024, right around the time Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio, was wrapping up its extended season with those last couple of chilly weekend days still running Hello Weekends events. I'd had a gold season pass that year and barely used it. So on a whim the week before, I decided to make the solo road trip from my home in Michigan. 3 hours each way. No big deal. I'd done it plenty of times. My fiancée, we were engaged then, was dealing with ongoing stomach problems and couldn't handle the intensity of the rides anymore. None of my friends were free on short notice. Fine, I thought. I'm an introvert anyway. I know the park like the back of my hand. I'll ride what I want at my own pace, no compromising on lines or plans. It'll be relaxing in its own way. I pulled into the parking lot around 3 p.m., bought a quick bite, and headed straight for Millennium Force, one of my all-time favorites. The line was moving steadily, and the guy right in front of me was short, bald, clean-shaven, roughly my age, dressed in a plain hoodie and jeans. Nothing flashy, nothing particularly striking. He turned around and started chatting about the coaster, standard ride enthusiast stuff. I geeked out a little because, yeah, I'm a Cedar Point nerd. The conversation flowed easily at first. As we inched forward, though, it shifted. He mentioned he was autistic, described himself as having savant-like abilities, smarter than most people, and asked what I thought about that. Then came the personal questions, what I did for work, where I went to college, my birthday, I gave it casually, the retail chain where I was employed, and a very rough idea of where I lived in Michigan, maybe within a 20-mile radius, but definitely no specific town. I didn't think much of it then. I was just trying to be kind. He didn't seem to have many people who talked to him like a normal human, and I felt bad. By the time we boarded Millennium Force, he'd flat out asked to ride together. I said sure for that one coaster. No harm, right? But afterward he pushed. So, you sure you don't want to stick together the rest of the day? I tried to be gentle. I explained I was extremely introverted, had come specifically to enjoy my own company and ride at my own speed. No offense intended. He immediately went to the guilt. Is it something I did? Is it because I'm autistic? People always do this to me. I backpedaled fast, reassuring him it wasn't personal. He seemed great. I was just wired to need solo time. He accepted it halfway, then hit me with, okay, how about just one more ride? Then you can go your own way, I promise. Feeling bad and not wanting to be the jerk who ditches someone who clearly struggles socially, I caved. Fine, one more. We headed to Maverick. The line was long, about an hour, so we talked more. He came out as gay and shared some about that. I responded supportively, no judgment. He asked if I was gay. I said no, engaged to a woman. Politics came up somehow, and I learned he was a big Trump supporter, which, given the rest, was just one more layer of, huh. Still no major alarms blaring in my head. We finished Maverick, and I geared up to split. Surprise. Same plea for just one more. Same guilt trip about people always abandoning him. Same spineless me consoling, saying it's not you, it's me, and agreeing to yet another ride. This time Steel Vengeance. In that line, he opened up about having strong feelings for a handsome friend in his life and not knowing whether to confess. He pressed hard for my advice. If you were me, what would you do? I asked if the friend was gay too. He said he wasn't sure, maybe straight. I told him honestly that confessing to a straight guy could make things super awkward and suggested figuring that out first. He got noticeably down after that. And slowly, uncomfortably, it dawned on me. I was probably the friend he was talking about. The way he kept steering things back to me, the intensity, it fit. Sun was setting by the time we got off Steel Vengeance. I tried harder to end it, reiterated that it had been nice, but I really needed solo time. Nothing against him. I'm just introverted. I get how hard social stuff can be. He wasn't having it. Full guilt trip mode. I was getting seriously uncomfortable now, but still felt sorry for him. I said something lame like, "We can walk and talk while I think about it," just to buy a minute of peace. We headed toward the front of the park. He needed the bathroom and got super anxious. "You're not going to leave while I'm in there, right?" People have done that before. I assured him no, I wouldn't ditch him like that. I genuinely couldn't imagine abandoning someone who seemed vulnerable in a crowded park. In hindsight, maybe I should have. Politely excusing myself and vanishing might have been kinder to both of us. He finished, we kept walking. I had a brilliant idea to de-escalate. "How about you give me your number? If I'm back next year solo, I'll hit you up." He agreed reluctantly. Then, predictably, "Text me so I'm in your contacts too." I blanked on an excuse and just did it. Now he had my number. Next, "What's your last name for my phone?" I said no, politely but firmly. I don't give that out to people I just met. He got offended. "What? You think I'm gonna stalk you?" I explained I was just cautious. He dropped it, annoyed. Then he asked where I lived specifically. I gave the same vague area as before, name of the bigger city 30 minutes from my actual town. He pushed, "No, what town? I go to a place in southern Michigan for work sometimes. Maybe we could meet up?" Again, I held the line. I'm not comfortable sharing that. He pulled up Google Maps, showed me his exact house, zoomed in. "See? Now you show me." I still refused. He got irritated, but backed off. By now I was drained, starting to feel genuinely uneasy. It was dark, I was alone in another state, and this guy's insecurity was turning intense. I didn't know how far he'd go if rejected too harshly. I started bullshitting. My fiancée wasn't feeling well. I needed to head home to take care of her. He half accepted but begged for one last thing. Ride Power Tower with him before I left. Same guilt ritual. I don't even know why I said yes. Exhaustion, fear of confrontation, autopilot people-pleasing. I'd never ridden it before and was honestly scared of it anyway. But there I was, in line, with this guy giddy and rambling about how he used to ride it with his ex-boyfriend. The ride itself is this giant phallic drop tower, and the whole vibe was surreal and horrifying. As we ascended slowly, he asked if he was making me uncomfortable, said he always pushes people away. I finally got real. Explained that while autism can make social cues hard, guilt-tripping strangers, prying into personal details right away, and not accepting no makes people pull back. It's not about being mean, it's about boundaries. The ride dropped, bounced, ended. He went quiet. We walked the midway. He tried rationalizing why people still leave him. I calmly repeated what I'd said. He stopped walking, looked down, then up at me with this slow, eerie expression. "Do you ever just drive really slow past a friend's house and just watch them?" My blood ran cold. No, I've never done that. I kept moving, mind racing. Okay, this is escalating. Time to end it hard. He backpedaled fast. It was a joke, but I wasn't buying it. I turned to him. "Look, this has been great. Nice meeting you. Had fun, but I have to go now." But I walked away purposefully, keeping him in my peripheral vision in case he followed or got aggressive. He just froze. Stood there. I didn't look back for a solid minute, then started checking every 10 seconds as I speed walked to the parking lot, 20 rows deep. Got to my car, locked myself in, let out the biggest "what the fuck" and called my fiancée. She talked me down. We laughed nervously as I drove the 3 hours home. For weeks, months, really, I was paranoid. He'd gotten my first name, birthday, rough location, phone number, college, workplace chain. Enough to potentially track me if you wanted. I kept waiting for a random text, a weird call, something. Nothing ever came. A year and a half later, still silence. I bought a gun for the apartment partly because of that day. Looking back, I was embarrassingly spineless. I let politeness override every instinct. Let one awkward encounter ruin my solo park day, handed out way too much personal info, and dragged it out far longer than I should have. It was a brutal, expensive lesson in setting firm boundaries, especially, with people who seem vulnerable or odd. Say no clearly, stick to it, don't cave to guilt. I wish I'd learned it some other way, but at least now I know. To the guy from that November afternoon at Cedar Point, thanks for the reminder to trust my gut. I'm 21, living alone in a rundown, low-income apartment complex while scraping through college on a tight budget. No fancy locks, no doorman, just thin walls and a security guard who barely glances up from his phone. One ordinary night, a loud slam rattled my front door so violently that it cracked open an inch right in front of me. And what the building's grainy security footage later revealed still makes my skin crawl. A complete stranger had somehow gotten inside the building, picked my lock, and was stepping through the threshold, until something spooked him and he bolted. If that noise hadn't woken me up exactly when it did, I might never have known how close I came to having an intruder standing over me while I slept. My routine that week was the same as always. I wake up early, brew cheap instant coffee in my tiny kitchenette, head to my part-time job. This particular day, though, there was a surprise power outage at work, so they sent everyone home around 3 p.m. I caught my usual crowded city bus toward campus. Normally it's packed shoulder to shoulder, people pressed against the windows, but that afternoon the bus was unusually empty, almost peaceful. I rode it to class, attended lectures, hung out at a friend's place for a bit afterward to study and eat whatever snacks were around, then headed back. By the time evening rolled around, it was late enough that I didn't feel safe taking the bus home alone in the dark. I splurged on an Uber instead, something I try to avoid because money is always tight. The driver dropped me right in front of my building. I paid, thanked him, and walked through the dimly lit entrance lobby. That's when I noticed a guy sitting on the steps near one of the ground floor units. He was just there, slouched against the wall, scrolling on his phone or something. I'd never seen him before in the 2 years I'd lived here. In a place this small, new faces stand out, especially ones loitering late at night. But I told myself he could be visiting family, a cousin crashing on someone's couch, whatever. I didn't want to be paranoid. I nodded vaguely if he looked up. He didn't. Then climbed the stairs to my floor, unlocked my door, and went inside. I did my usual wind down, kicked off my shoes, heated up leftovers, flipped on the TV for background noise. It was around 11 p.m., and I was starting to feel sleepy, thinking about brushing my teeth and crashing. Then, a huge, violent slam from right outside my apartment. It sounded exactly like someone yanking a door hard and letting it swing back. My own front door actually moved, pushed inward about an inch before the latch caught again. My heart slammed into my ribs so hard I couldn't breathe for a second. I stared at the door, frozen, half expecting it to fly open. Nothing. Silence. I crept over, peered through the peephole, empty hallway. I chain-locked the door, the one flimsy chain the building provides, backed away, and immediately called my friend who lives just a couple blocks away in the same neighborhood. He answered half asleep, but woke up fast when I whispered what happened. He was at my place in under 10 minutes. Together we searched every corner of my tiny one-bedroom. under the bed, in the closet, behind the shower curtain. Nothing out of place. No footprints, no scratches, no sign anyone had been inside. But that slam had been real. My door had literally opened. We decided to check the building's security cameras. The lobby has one ancient setup, grainy black and white feeds that record to a hard drive somewhere in the manager's office. We tracked down the night security guard, the same one who usually ignores everything, and explained. He grumbled, but led us into the little security room after calling the building's supervisor to get permission. We rewound the footage to around 11 p.m. There it was, the same guy I'd seen earlier in the lobby. He walks up the stairs calmly, glances around, then stops at my door. He pulls something out, maybe a tool, maybe just a credit card or shim, and starts working the lock. It takes him maybe 30 to 45 seconds, but the door pops open. He pushes it inward and starts to step inside. Then he freezes. Something must have startled him. Maybe he heard me moving inside. Maybe he saw my shadow under the door crack. Maybe he just got cold feet. Whatever it was, he yanked the door back, slammed it shut. That's the noise that nearly stopped my heart, and sprinted down the hallway toward the stairwell. He disappeared out the building's side exit. The footage was clear enough to show his face, his clothes, everything. We called the police right then. Officers arrived, watched the video, took copies, walked the building asking residents if anyone recognized him. Nobody did. Not a single person had ever seen him before. When I asked the security guard why he hadn't noticed some random guy wandering the halls, he shrugged and said, "Lots of people come and go at night. I can't watch every door." In a low-income building like this one, security is more of a suggestion than a guarantee. No keycard entry, no buzzer system that actually works half the time, just a guy at a desk who mostly stays put. The police took my statement, promised to run the footage through whatever systems they have, maybe see if he matched any known profiles. I gave them my contact info and asked them to keep me updated. Weeks turned into months. Every time I called the non-emergency line to follow up, they said the case was still active or under investigation, but nothing ever came of it. No arrests, no leads, no name. The guy vanished like he'd never existed. To this day, I replay that night in my head and feel sick. I think he must have spotted me somewhere earlier, maybe on the bus one day, maybe walking to the store, maybe even that afternoon when I left work early and the bus was empty. He followed, waited for the right moment when I was alone, learned my routine, slipped into the building behind someone else, and tried to get inside while I was awake but distracted. The only reason it didn't go further was dumb luck. A noise, a hesitation, whatever made him bolt. I still live here because I can't afford to move yet. I added a heavy-duty door jammer, a personal alarm, extra chain locks from the hardware store. I never take the bus late anymore, and I scanned every face in the lobby. But every time I hear a creak in the hallway or the building door bang shut downstairs, my stomach drops. To the stranger who picked my lock that night and almost stepped into my life, I hope they never find you, and I hope we never meet.